Good morning, everyone, or God Morgen, if that's how you pronounce it. That's the only Norwegian that I'm going to be doing today. My name's Niall McKenzie, and this is my colleague Brandon Wilkerson. We're both cyber underwriters in our London office. We've both got key focuses on the Nordics, and today we're going to be talking around winning the battle against cyber risks. So, briefly, just an introduction to Beazley. We're a global specialist insurer which was founded in 1986. We focus on 5 lines of business, with cyber being our sort of flagship product. We're currently the largest cyber insurer in the world with 1.6 billion gross written premium. And I think what's interesting about Beazley is that cyber is between 20 to 25% of our total portfolio. A key driver in the growth over the next few years is going to be the Nordics and European business. Currently, our Nordic book is sitting around 30 million in premium, and we're going to see a lot more growth within Europe over the next few years.
So what's driving a lot of that growth? I think that's one of the main questions that we're seeing here today. That's one of the main reasons why you're in the audience, and we're seeing cyber be a huge proponent and a propeller of where that growth is all across Europe. So in 2024, most recently, right, the global cyber market has reached 15 billion. That's expected to grow to 29 billion over the next couple of years, and that's a huge part of why we're here today and where we see it happening in Europe. But you're asking yourself, well, why is that? Why is it growing? Number one is the frequency. We know that there's more awareness occurring simply because there's higher frequency of cyber events happening. We're seeing the regulatory environment, that landscape is changing annually, even more frequently. There was a great conversation previously about the EU regulation, GDPR, NIS2, DORA. All of this is having an implication on your D&O, on your cyber. What are you doing to maintain compliance, and how do you protect your businesses? Businesses are also becoming more digitized. You're seeing, just an evolution of businesses moving to the cloud. You're seeing a lot more focus on how you protect your network, whether that be from the external perimeter, then what happens once the threat actor gets in the environment, how are you protecting your business there, all the way to your backup security. And so there's a flow chart that's occurring. And a lot of businesses are asking the question, what tools do I use? What products do I use? How do I manage that risk environment? And that goes all the way from the cyber insurance landscape, as well as to the vendors and the partners that you're working with. And that's why you're starting to see so much growth in the market. And that's a lot of what we're going to cover today on where that's happening.
Yeah, so what we're going to be covering today is the common cyber risks and how you can protect against them, how you can protect your cybersecurity along with insurance and how that can help, the key coverages of cyber insurance, and a ready to buy checklist. So the baseline controls which we asked for, which has been derived from our claims history and the claims data that we've gathered over the past few years. And it's more so how insurance can fit into the overall security framework and how you can build that resiliency.
I wish we could stand up here and tell you that the threat environment is more sophisticated and that we're seeing the same risks that are happening daily, and that these risks have changed from 2019. But the fact of the matter is that it hasn't. You might have threat actors that are becoming a lot more sophisticated. You're seeing tools like artificial intelligence. You're seeing the cyber transformation happen digitally. But at the end of the day, we're still seeing the same risks. One of those being ransomware, one of those being weak passwords and multi-factor authentication not being deployed. You're seeing phishing training. There's no substitute for human error. The tools that you put in place, of course, are meant to mitigate and help that. But one thing you can't solve for is human errors. Retrospectively, how you protect your business is where it's most important. Again, it goes back to the tools that you're using. How are you training your employees? What access controls do you have in place? These are all things that businesses should be considering and contemplating, as well as brokers when you're advising your clients. Do you have a checklist in place to say, how are you protecting your perimeter? How are you protecting your internal environment? And what are you doing if somebody gets into your network? Do you have the right backups in place? Because what we're seeing on our end is it's still the same low-hanging fruit. It's quite boring, actually. It's not as exciting as it may seem, but we're seeing the same risks, the same losses that happen simply because the baseline controls aren't in place. And some of that we'll uncover today in terms of the ready to buy checklist. But it's amazing how quickly the cyber environment and landscape changes, yet the risks are staying the same. And we're not always seeing businesses adapt and evolve with that. And so some of it is coming, with our conversations about this is what the regulatory environment is looking to try and establish. How should they protect themselves? And this is where it becomes a key partner for your insurance providers as well as with your brokers who can educate businesses to say, this is what insurance companies are providing to you. This is where you can get the resources. This is where we can help. But in turn as well, brokers also have to have the resources too, to be able to provide that value to the customers and say, again, here's the key exposures. This is where we can support you. You look at the claims environment, and while it is quite small at the moment, it is projected to increase. And you look at the day to day and you say, well, I've driven a car for 20 years and never had an accident. Does that mean you don't need auto insurance? Now, there's a difference in terms of auto insurance being compulsory, but at the end of the day, it's being prepared and having the right resources and tools in place that if something does happen, you're going to be protected. And a lot of that is what we'll continue to talk about today. But by and large, the risks are staying the same. So it's all about how do we educate policyholders, how do we educate clients to be an improved risk and improve their own security posture and uncover things that they may not have even thought of before, such as having multi-factor authentication or making your password something different than the 6 characters that you've used for every single account since you were 12, right?
Yeah, and I think the vendors that we work with, they're seeing the exact same issue still. They say that they're like a broken record in terms of trying to get clients to implement these controls. These are still the methods that threat actors are using and exploiting. So I think here it's important to state that with a cyber insurance policy, you're buying it. The main focus for buying it is it's going to pay claims, but that's not all it does. It's not just a piece of paper. It's not a product where you buy and then wait till the next year for the renewal terms and then engage with insurers 2 months out. It's something that you should be constantly reviewing and engaging with your insurers with, having that back and forth. And I think it starts with, the risk landscape is constantly evolving. There's emerging threats all the time. And when you're going to buy cyber insurance, you should be thinking, how does your cyber insurer help you with that? So, for example, are they having monthly meetings with MI6, ex-FBI agents? Are they trying to get into that, the knowledge that these sorts of high-level people have of the threat actors and the risk landscape? Are they helping you improve your cyber security infrastructure? For example, selected vendors with negotiated rates. There's been stories of clients where they've saved a lot more in money compared to their premium. So saving 60k when they're buying a new cybersecurity product and their premium is only 30k. Instantly, that pays for cyber insurance. Are they helping you with risk management training? A global insurer will have a global perspective on what they're seeing across clients of all sizes and all cyber risk landscapes, and threat actors act differently all across the globe. So it's important to get a true global perspective, and they're helping you with data analysis. That's the really invaluable data that you're not going to get anywhere else. We see all sorts of claims coming in through all sorts of revenue-sized companies, all sorts of industries, and it's invaluable data that we can pass on to clients.
I think when you look at a quote or policy, the first thing most businesses turn to, even brokers. You look at the policy premium, right? And you compare it to see what else is out there in the market. But what isn't shown in the premium are the risk management offerings that most carriers are likely already providing or should be providing. One of those Niles mentioned is discounts. Oftentimes your carriers are going to have relationships with vendors, whether that be endpoint detection products, SOC providers, MSSPs, vendors that your companies are actively looking for. And so if you're going through a tender process, it's worth inquiring with your insurance providers. Say, do you have any relationships that we can leverage where we can get a discount off of what we're providing? More than likely, they do. There was a question about how do I report, questions for the board, right? How do I gain support or get leverage? Many carriers, if they don't already, can also support conversations that you're having at a board level to help uncover the need or the reason why we should either be purchasing cyber insurance or these are the benefits of that risk transfer. It's more than just a piece of paper. And I think you're seeing insurance move from just that indemnification claims process to a lot more of the value-added services that come along with it that isn't seen in just the policy premium. And that's one of the best benefits that I think Niall and I get out of largely working in Nordic countries is that it's very trust focused, it's very relationship oriented, and there's a true need from businesses that say we want to improve our own security posture. And that's where we as an insurance company are really able to add that value to provide those services and say we have the expertise, we have the claims experience, we see these globally, and we can often help where you may not know who to turn to or where to turn to. And we have the resources and tools to be able to do that, either engaging those conversations with you or again getting support from higher up.
Yeah, and we have a cyber services team which helps clients with improving their cyber resiliency and helps with those risk management tools. So, for example, you should be looking at if your cyber insurer can help you with threat intelligence data. They can provide you with risk management offerings such as workshops, tailored workshops to clients that will run through ransomware scenarios, business continuity plans. It's all about that mutual benefit. If a cyber insurer can improve a client's risk posture, it's more unlikely they're going to have a claim. And if they can keep that engagement up throughout the whole cycle of the insurance policy, it builds that trust and relationship. And in a time of crisis, a client will want to be able to talk to people who they've talked to before, have a good understanding with them, and try and contain an incident as quickly as possible. In a cyber incident, minutes really do count. And that's where, when you're looking at cyber insurance, you should really look at what is the incident response team looking like? Is it full of legal and IT security experts? What are their relationships like with legal vendors, forensic companies? How quickly can these vendors step up when they are in a time of need and a time of crisis? It's really building that trust and relationship and making sure that everything's ironed out, the process is in place should they need to call up the cyber insurance and make sure that the policy kicks in. For example, another really strong reason why cyber insurance is so important is a lot of these companies will have large retainers. For example, the ransomware negotiation firm that we use, their retainer is around 90k. If you buy the insurance, you're at the top of the list for them to work with you and try and contain and bring down that price of a ransom demand, should that be the case. You get access to all of these expert companies, and that's really what you're paying for, to get that expertise and make sure that your business can be up and running again as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think before we get into the coverage, and what I would ask you to leave, ask yourself in terms of this slide is what is my takeaway? We know that the claims environment is minimal, right? And so you ask yourself, well, I'm not seeing claims. Why do I need cyber insurance? At the end of the day, it's for the expertise, it's for the vendor relationships, it's for the services that come along with purchasing the coverage. It's not just a piece of paper. And so it's better to be prepared. It's better to have that transfer, even if the claims environment aren't quite there. We know it's coming. But at the end of the day, having that relationship with an insurance provider that can provide that support whether it be through your broker, through the businesses, is a key component of where we're seeing. And it's not just the premium; it's more than that. And so I'd ask here. This is one of the most important elements that I would say is takeaway is we're not seeing the claims. Why do I need it? This is what I would look to.
Yeah, and seeing it as an extension of your cybersecurity team, having someone you can call up, get an opinion, without triggering the policy. It's more just making sure that you've got that understanding between yourselves and having that open dialogue to ensure that an incident doesn't turn bigger than it needs to be.
So not all cyber policies are created equal, but more often than not, you're going to get the same level of coverage. One of the first and foremost is the breach services, right? So when you have an actual or suspected data breach or security breach, and the key part is actual or suspected, right? You could have an incident that you don't know if it's gone anywhere. You might say, I don't know if data's been compromised, but I want to check. I don't know if somebody's in my network, but I want to check. This is the most common insurance agreements that are triggered in a policy. Being able to pick up the phone as an insured and just call and say, hey, I think there's something going on, but I'm not quite sure. I want to check. Getting that expertise, getting that advice, having a legal forensic, having a legal party come in and understand what are your repercussions, what's the regulatory environment like, who do I need to notify, understanding and having those resources available at a moment's notice is invaluable. Having a forensics investigator to be able to look into your network and uncover, is somebody in my network? Should I be concerned? Having that built into the policy is one of the most important aspects, and it's one of the most frequently triggered insurance agreements that you see in a cyber policy.
I think going into the other areas of what the actual policy will cover, so you can split it up into first party and third party. So you've got your business interruption. This will also cover dependent in business interruption. One of the most important things to consider here is what is the dependent business interruption actually covering? Does it extend to non-IT vendors? For example, if a manufacturing company relied upon a logistics firm in order to carry out their business activities, does it extend to that? Does it extend beyond just IT vendors? And then you've got your cyber extortion. So in the event of a ransomware attack, if a threat actor is demanding X amount of money in order to unlock systems and ensure that you can continue your business operations, the cyber insurance would kick in. We work with a cyber extortion company that would run the sanctions checks to ensure that you're not going to be breaching sanctions law, paying a sanctioned entity, and they would do all of the negotiation for you. Then your data recovery costs, e-crime, and then breach response services like Brandon was just mentioning. That's one of the most important things, the breach response services, your access to the legal, the forensic companies, PR. More times than not, it's important what you don't say than what you actually say when you're potentially notifying customers, and that reputational damage that you could potentially get. And then you've got your third party coverages. So your payment card liabilities and costs, your media liability, then of course your data and network liability, regulatory and defence penalties. We see a lot of claims from this. If an assured is potentially liable for certain data being breached, we'd cover the defence and penalties that come along with that. I think, like we were talking about in the last session, the data and network liability environment in Europe is a lot less than the US. The litigation is, of course, a lot bigger in the US, the culture is, but I was chatting to a law firm last week, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Europe is not going to follow with the US in years to come. It's just more the culture at the moment is not really in that litigation environment.
So we'll wrap up with two slides. First one is being considerations, and I'm sure you're asking these questions quite frequently when you're looking at insurance. Is for one, what data do I hold? Could I be potentially liable for that? What's the regulatory environment? Are there fines and penalties that I could be liable for if I don't protect my consumer data the way that I say I am or that I need to? It's understanding the business impact that it could have to your company. Is there a business income loss that is prevalent should you have a cyber attack and your operations are shut down? Are there any data network and recovery costs for somebody to come into my network and actually investigate the incident? Is that something that I'm liable for? And it's understanding and asking businesses these questions, even as a broker, even as a CISO, as a risk manager. Again, what could go wrong, right? What could I potentially be liable for? And I think these are becoming a lot more prevalent. A lot of these, I can't say it for certainty that it's always going to be preventable, but you have a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be avoided simply by improving your security posture. So even though you have a liability to your customer, to your business, there are certain controls in place that we view as baseline, the minimum standard that companies should put in place in order to better protect their business. And they're quite often regular cadences that you may have in place already, but oftentimes we find companies don't. And that's where we'll conclude today on our last slide now.
Yeah, so we've worked hard with third parties to establish some baseline controls, which we view to be the absolute minimum criteria when looking at buying cyber insurance. So you've got your 3 ones in pink there, which are absolutely critical. So your endpoint detection, which is basically like an antivirus system, MFA for remote access. Again, it's amazing how many clients just still don't have this in place. And I think when you're not working with cybersecurity on a day-to-day basis, I can see how MFA would maybe be a bit of an annoyance. It's another, hurdle to jump through when you're logging into your work computers or whatever. But it's such an important control to have, and it's so easy for threat actors to penetrate and compromise systems without it. And then it goes into, these are the other recommendations we'd have. So offline backups, incredibly important. If your systems get compromised, you can't get into your system. So a threat actor will have much more leverage if you have not got any offline backups, which you recover from. Phishing training, again, it's a very basic tool, but it's amazing how many companies still don't invest into having that as part of their cybersecurity infrastructure. And then your more maybe developed cybersecurity products, such as your EDR and your security operations center. Again, with your cyber insurance, you should be asking the cyber insurer, do you have discounts? How can you help me with implementing these tools? And open that dialogue, because the better risk, the better infrastructure that you have, the less likely you're going to have a claim. So it just benefits everyone involved.
All right, and with that concludes our portion of the seminar.